This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.
You have 30 seconds to look at questions 1 to 5.
Good afternoon. Watto Insurance. This is Janet speaking. How may I help you?
Yes, hello. I would like to make a claim on my car insurance, please.
Certainly, sir. First of all, I'd like to inform you that all of our calls are recorded for monitoring and training purposes. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Could you please tell me your full name?
Sure, it's Mr. Bennett Fisher.
Okay, sorry, how do you spell your surname?
It's spelled Fischer.
Great, thank you. I see that you have taken out a third-party fire and theft premium with us on a 2013 light blue Volkswagen Passat. Is that okay?
Yes, well, almost. The colour is not light blue, it's light green.
Okay, thank you for updating your information with us. What is the nature of your claim with us today?
Last weekend, I had driven up to York on business and left my car in a monitored car park. However, it was only monitored until 8 p.m, and I did not return to collect it until 9:30 p.m, after which no car park staff were present. When I arrived at the car park, my car wasn't there. It must have been stolen.
I see. Were there any valuable items left in your car which could have been seen from outside?
Well, I had recently bought quite an expensive radio for my car, but the front panel is detachable, and I always stow it in my glove compartment. So, no, there wouldn't have been anything valuable on display.
Okay, Mr. Fisher. Thank you for that information. I'm going to send you some forms through the mail for you to fill in. Before I can do that, I need to ask you a couple more questions. Is that okay?
Of course.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 6 to 10.
Thanks, Mr. Fisher. First of all, could you let me know your policy number, please?
Of course. I have it right here. It's G34C245.
G34C245. Thanks. And the type of claim? Shall we say stolen car?
Yes, the car was definitely stolen. I reported it to the police immediately. I actually have the report number here if that's of any use.
No, not right now. But keep hold of that as we will need to see a copy of the police report eventually. Which police station did you report the offence at?
York Police Station.
Was it your first time in York?
No, but it was the first time I'd driven there. I usually take the train.
Were you aware that the car park was only manned until 8 p.m?
No, I was not aware of that.
Were there any signs put up on the premises that informed car owners of the risks of leaving their cars after normal operating hours?
Yes, but they said the car park was going to be guarded until 10 p.m, at which point the entrance is barred so no cars can come in or out.
Was any reason given for that sudden change?
The police informed me that the staff on duty that night had left on an urgent call. I believe it was something about a family member being admitted to hospital.
Were there any personal items left in your car?
Yes, first of all, there was the car radio I mentioned before.
Ah, yes, of course. Anything else?
Just some CDs and an old jacket.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. I have everything I need for now and will send these forms out to you shortly. When you get them, please fill them out with as much information as you can, and where possible, include copies of any relevant documents to support your claim, such as police reports and registration details. Once you have returned that to us, we can then start to assess whether you will be eligible to receive compensation. Do you have any further questions for me today?
No, that's all. Thanks for your help.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You'll hear a lecturer talking to students about a printing process.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
As I've made clear in earlier lectures, many different solutions have been proposed to the basic technological problem of getting meaningful marks onto paper. In other words, several different forms of printing have developed over the years, many of which are still in use today for different purposes. This week, I'd like to discuss the rotogravure process. This is one of the most widely used printing processes, and after describing how the process works, I'll be describing some of its industrial uses and the advantages and disadvantages of this form of printing. As the name implies, rotogravure is a form of printing in which large cylindrical pieces of metal rotate, while the paper to be printed passes between them. The paper is held in place against the printing surface by the impression roller. The weight of this roller is one of the factors that affect how much ink is actually transferred to the paper. Remember that this roller does not directly transfer ink onto the paper. The side in contact with the impression roller remains blank, and it's the other side of the paper which is actually the printed side. The impression roller presses the paper against the ink-bearing roller, generally known as the gravure cylinder. This roller is etched or engraved using either a laser or a diamond-tipped etching machine. This creates a large number of tiny holes in the surface of the roller which hold the ink. The depth and size of these holes determines how much ink is picked up from the ink fountain, which the whole printing assembly rests in. How much ink is picked up, in turn, determines the density of the image produced. As it rotates, the lower roller picks up more ink on its surface than is required, and this needs to be removed before contact with the paper. A flat edge, called the doctor blade, scrapes against the surface and removes all ink which is not in one of the holes on the surface of the lower roller. This should lead to a clean image.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now that we understand a little of the mechanics of rotogravure printing, I'd like to look at it in the wider context of the printing industry and discuss the main uses. One of the main advantages of the rotogravure process is that the amount of ink which can be transferred to the paper is high compared to other printing methods. This means that a broad density range can be produced. In other words, with rotogravure, it's possible to produce many different light and dark shades, making it particularly suitable for reproducing photographs and fine art. For shorter print runs, some other processes may give a finer image, but rotogravure is ideal for jobs that involve printing, for example, 1 million magazines. One common place where you'll see printed matter that has been produced by rotogravure is in the advertising material that is often inserted into Sunday newspapers. Of course, it's not just paper that can be printed by rotogravure. It's a very flexible process, since the rollers used can be made to any size required. Whether it's consumer packaging or large rolls of floor covering that need to be printed, rotogravure is a relatively cheap, quick method that is used in a variety of industries. This isn't to say that rotogravure is without its disadvantages. Probably the main drawback is the fact that, with large areas of colour, the dots are visible, even without using any kind of magnifying aid. Now, does anyone have any questions about the rotogravure process?
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a conversation between two students who will discuss a project they're working on together. You have 30 seconds to look at questions 21 to 27.
Hey Jess, glad you could make it. We've got a lot to discuss.
Hi, Matt. Yes, sorry I'm a bit late. I did bring all my notes with me.
Yes, me too. Where shall we start?
Well, I think it would be a good idea to clarify our objectives just one more time.
Yes, good idea. Okay, here we are. We need to record, photograph, and identify the plant species in 10 1-square-meter plots.
Does it say anything about where these plots should be and how they should be laid out?
Ah, here it is. It says that all the plots need to be no more than 10 meters apart.
And how do we choose them?
Ah, this is the fun part. I remember this. Here we are. Make a 1-meter square frame using bamboo sticks available from the department stores.
Yes, we've already done that.
I know, I'm just reading the whole section.
Okay.
One person stands roughly in the middle of the chosen area and throws the frame. The other person uses a tape to mark out the square where the frame landed and returns frame to thrower. The thrower then turns a few degrees on the spot and throws again. The thrower must turn slightly after each throw and vary the force of the throw until after the 10th throw they are pointing in almost the same direction as the first.
That sounds a bit complicated.
That's only because it's all in writing. It's just a simple throw, turn, throw, turn, throw, turn until we have 10 squares.
And I guess you want to do the throwing.
Well, if you don't mind. I'm sure you'll be more accurate at marking the squares.
Yes, I am sure I am, and I'm sure you've got a stronger throwing arm.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 28 to 30.
Okay, good. We've got that sorted. Now we need to decide where to go.
Yes, I've been thinking about that and I've brought the map.
Ah, well done. I forgot mine.
Now, I've identified 3 possible locations, but they've all got some disadvantages.
Okay, fire away.
Well, the area around this lowland marsh could be interesting. There'll be a lot of interesting water plants here.
Looks good, but what's the problem?
Mainly that it's already a designated nature reserve, and I think there's already been a lot of research done here.
Ah, I see. Well, I'd rather do something that's new and can be useful.
I agree. That's why I identified this area further west. See, here, behind the beach.
Oh, yes, I see. That area there, where it's flat, but quite high.
Exactly. If you look a bit further inland, you'll see that there are hills which will protect that area from strong north winds.
I see. Excellent. But what's the problem?
Just that it may not be very interesting. We know that the geology there is not conducive to a wide variety of plants.
I agree. So what's your last idea?
Well, I think this one is a bit of a winner, although I did want to show you the other 2. Look up here, on the north coast.
Where?
See this bay? Well, I know that there's been quite a lot of studies done here, but a bit further to the east, behind this headland. No one has ever looked at that. Well, I certainly couldn't see any studies.
That is interesting. And the plant life could be a bit different because of the shelter from the wind the headland provides.
Exactly.
Brilliant, Jessica. That's a great idea. We'll go there.
Thanks. Now all we have to decide is when is a good time.
Well...
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
The word thesaurus comes from Greek and means treasure house. So, to tell us more about Roget's thesaurus is linguist Dr. Cindy Channer. Now then, Cindy, we know Roget classified the English language. Well, the 150th edition has just come out. It sold 32 million copies. Yes, that's right, 32 million. What is it? Roget's Thesaurus. Now, Roget's Thesaurus is a type of dictionary in which words with similar meanings are grouped together. The word thesaurus comes from Greek and means treasure house. So, to tell us more about Roget's Thesaurus is linguist Dr. Cindy Channer. Now then, Cindy, we know Roget classified the English language, but what do we know about the man himself?
Well, Mr. Roget, or to give him his full name, Peter Mark Roget, was a very interesting man indeed. He grew up in London, he was French, and he spent his early life in a French community there. He later travelled all the way from London to Edinburgh to study medicine at the university there, and graduated when he was 19 years old, and he later went on to become a founder of Manchester Medical School.
So his life focused around his career as a doctor?
Well, actually, no. Roget had a very wide range of interests indeed. In fact, he was a writer and wrote about many topics such as bees, the kaleidoscope, and even perception and feeling in animals. And he was an inventor too. In fact, in 1814, he invented an early version of the slide rule.
The slide rule?
Yes, the device that can calculate numbers. Then 10 years later, he developed a prototype for the cine camera. And he also got involved in a range of different projects. For example, he became head of a commission investigating London's water supply, and he developed a method of water filtration through sand. And he was involved in the area of education. He was one of the founders of London University. And do you play chess by any chance, Mark?
Yes, I do.
Well, Roget invented the travelling chess set. So next time you're playing a game of chess on a train, you have Mr. Roget to thank.
So, how did he actually find the time to classify the English language?
Well, he only turned his full attention to the thesaurus when he retired, and that was when he was in his 70s.
So what inspired him to write the thesaurus?
Well, Roget believed that he should bring as much happiness and knowledge to the greatest number of people. So, during his career as a doctor, he gave free treatment to patients who couldn't afford to pay. We also know that he set up a clinic to help poor people to recover from operations and serious illnesses. Basically, he wrote the thesaurus to help people learn. He aimed to help those who needed practice in writing. He believed that writing skills would help people become more independent and lead happier lives.
How popular is the thesaurus today?
Well, it was first published in 1852 and it has never been out of print since. In fact, the book has become more popular with each edition that comes out. The invention of the crossword puzzle in 1913 certainly helped to increase the sales figures, though. I think the main reason why it is so popular is that it's thematic. So you can come across words that you've never even thought of when you began looking for the word in the first place.
Thanks, Cindy. Now join us again after this short break when I'll be talking to Derek Spode, chairperson of East Anglian News.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.